Good evening. I would like to welcome everyone today. This is the first time of Károli Open Talks. Our topic today is going to be space, technology, and education. I would like to welcome our guests tonight. And first of all, I'd like to welcome our honorable guests, Eryn Andrews and Jim Christensen. Eryn Andrews is a NASA engineer with more than 15 years of experience in various fields of the space industry. Through her career, she has worked on the design and operation of space station systems, as well as the training of astronaut crews and onboard engineers. She also has significant expertise in mission control and space logistics as well. Her key areas are designing and develop of spacewalks and spacesuits. And I think that's the first time when we have a NASA engineer here in Hungary. So I'm very proud that she accepted our invitation. And we have tonight with us Jim Christensen. Jim Christensen is the retired Director of Innovation at the Aldrin Family Foundation and formerly served as the Director of Education at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. Before that, he was working for NASA Johnstone Space Center in Houston, and he was a part of the teaching from the space program, where he was organized video conferences between the crew of the International Space Station and school classrooms. Jim, prior to his work at NASA, Jim taught high school for 18 years and awarded the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching in 1995. Actually, I could continue a long list of his and her expertise, but I think it's much more better that we don't waste time and we can start a very fruitful discussion and lots of questions concerning their expertise and lots of previous experiences in the space industry. So we're going to have a 45 minutes of discussion, and after we have the opportunity to ask questions for our esteemed guests. So thank you very much for coming, and I would like to invite to the table Jim and Eryn. Thank you very much. So, thank you very much that you just arrived here. How do you like Hungary anyway?
This has been amazing. This is my first trip to Europe ever, and my first trip to Hungary, and it has been an incredible experience today. We spent the day touring all around Budapest, and wow, there are no words. So thank you very much for having me here. I'm truly honored.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to hear.
I look at this place and I think, do you get used to being in buildings like this and seeing this beauty around you? Just look at that. I don't know that there's a place like this in the United States.
Well, there are beautiful buildings anyway, but I think the content is much more important, that there are brilliant students and brilliant professors who try to be here and try to educate the future, and I think it's a very rare opportunity to have a talk like that. So first of all, I would like to ask a question for both of you. What inspired to get involved in space technology and space exploration?
So for me, my family was in the military, and if you know anything about the US military, you move around a lot. Every few years you move. And back in the 90s, when I was 8 years old, my family got stationed in Florida, which is where we launched all the space shuttles. And it was there my parents took my sister and I out to watch our very first space shuttle launch. And my dad said, look in the distance, you're going to see a rocket. And in a few minutes, that rocket is going to blast off into space and carry people called astronauts. And growing up there, I saw a lot of videos of astronauts floating and playing with their food in space, and I thought that looked amazing. And I knew from 8 years old that that's what I want to do. I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. And so for me, that's how it started.
That's the motivation. Yeah, great. How about you, Jim?
You know, I don't remember this, but what my parents tell me is that when I was a child, I was born in '57 when Sputnik first went up, and I had a teddy bear called Sputnik. But apparently there would be television coverage like all day when there was a launch, and I was a child that was always into things, and they would turn on the television, and I would literally watch the coverage of the rocket launch all day as a baby. And they said, that kid's going to be in the space program. And so I don't know how this happened, but I was 12 years old when Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. And that is incredibly inspiring to see that.
Well, I think I've already got the answer for your personal motivation as well, so that's really a motivation. And my second question would be, what qualifications are needed to be involved in space technology and space exploration?
Qualifications?
Yes, what qualifications?
Many is the short
That's why
answer.
I was asking that question.
There are a lot of different ways to join space. Most people think, oh, you have to be an engineer and that's it, maybe a doctor. But I can tell you, I know many people who have taken many different paths, many of which you would not have expected, and they can all come and work at NASA or in space in general. For myself, my bachelor degree is in engineering, and then I have a master's degree in space studies, where I studied humans, what it does to your body, to your mind to be in space. But that's just one of 100 different ways you can come and be a part of the space exploration.
What's your opinion about it?
For me, a little bit different thing. I did not know what I wanted to be when I went to college. And I decided I'll be a teacher because I love all these different topics. And I just love to look at a topic and figure out, try to understand it well enough to be able to explain it in a simple way. We have a saying that you never know anything so well as the day you can teach it to somebody else. And I wanted to be that guy that could teach it to somebody else. And my way into NASA and working with space program was to get so that I could teach kids about it. And that was the qualification for me, because I'm a social science, economics, history guy.
Great. So there are several ways, because we have lots of students here. I also, as I mentioned before, we don't train engineers here, not yet, maybe in the future, I don't know. But we are specialized in human science, and that's why it's very important to understand that that's not only engineers who can get into the space industry, but there are several other ways. It's good to know.
I'll just let you know real quick. I had a coworker. She was not an engineer. Her degree was in biology. And before she came to NASA, she used to work at SeaWorld training the whales to jump.
Wow.
And now she works at NASA.
Wow, that's a good way. But anyway, that's a very specific subject anyway. But right now, how do you see the roles of schools and universities, how they can shape the future of space industry?
Universities, schools play such an important role. I was very fortunate as a child to have really great teachers all through my primary and secondary education that were extremely supportive and passionate and excited about space. And their passion and excitement fueled me, especially during my moments of self-doubt, where in my head I'm thinking, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, but my teacher said, yes, you are, go. And they would not let me quit. So teachers and schools play such an important role.
What's your opinion about that?
I'm trying to think how to go about answering this, because this has been my career.
That's why I'm asking
45
that.
minutes total. And so in the 45 seconds that I really have to do that, all I can say is that we need to find ways to connect space to kids' lives so they can connect their lives to what they may do in space someday. We know we each have to breathe, drink water, eat food, have a place to live, and have energy to run it. We need to be able to transport ourselves, to communicate, to have emergency services. Okay, that's what you need to live in space. That's what you need to be able to live here. And if we can make those connections, that space isn't, well, space is different, but human life is the same. And how could you connect what you would want to do to doing it some other place? And I think parents help with this, Teachers help with this. The universities provide classes.
Wow, and what is the earliest age when you can start it? The youngest age?
My granddaughter, I have 5 grandchildren. My 5-year-old granddaughter, my oldest one, the other day came up and said, "Papa, why does the moon look different on different nights?" I grab a ball and a flashlight, and we start looking at phases of the moon. One last thing, sorry.
If you have time, don't worry.
This same granddaughter walks into her preschool and sees a picture of Buzz Aldrin on the moon and says to the teacher, "That's my papa's boss." And the teacher just says, "Oh, that's so cute," and pats her on the head. And the teacher went to my daughter, who's also a teacher at that school, and said, "Blakely said the cutest thing." And that picture, that astronaut is your dad's boss. And Jamie says, "No, he isn't. That's his boss's dad." And the next week, I was with preschool launching, and there's a picture of 4 kids standing together holding hands with their feet about 6 inches off the ground watching a rocket go. When did we start? Hey, 3 years.
Do you one better. When my daughter was born, I was gifted a set of books of quantum mechanics for babies, theory of relativity for babies. And I opened it. Sure enough, it's the most one little sentence on how to explain these very complicated problems. So young or too old, at any point in life, you can get involved in this.
Wow, that's really impressive. So I just would like to move from general questions for certain specific questions. I think those questions which are very rarely heard in Hungary. So I have some questions to your profession, related to spacesuits and spacewalks. So my first question would be, how long does it take to learn how to use a spacesuit?
That is an interesting question, to learn how to use a spacesuit. So, for example, you've been selected to become an astronaut. Your training starts today. In general, about 2 years to complete your entire training, and a lot of that is going to be on spacesuits. So, yeah, roughly 2 years for just to learn how to do a spacesuit. But then once you get assigned your mission, you're going to go to space in 2 years from now. Every day from now until then, you're going to be training. You're going to come to me, and I'm going to teach you how to use a spacesuit. You're going to go to our giant swimming pool, and you're going to get in that spacesuit in the water, and you're going to practice moving all around just like you would in space, and we're going to drill it over and over thousands of hours.
And so I can imagine it's a long process.
Very long, but it goes by quick. I know as a teacher, as an instructor, we always said we never had enough time. I said, you've got 2 years, and I'm like, we're already late. We're already late.
And how do you feel when you are literally in the command center and space center, and basically your students are out? How do you feel it?
I feel like such a proud mom because they're astronauts. And they're coming to me. Who am I to be teaching astronauts? But okay. And I know more than them at this point about the spacesuit. And I'm going to teach them everything I know. And they're going to mess it up so much in training. But they're going to get it. We're going to get them there. And then I watch them on TV. And like, there they are. And I feel just like a proud parent. And that's my child flying. Sometimes they mess it up in space too, but that's okay. We fix it for them. And it's hard to describe other than feeling like such a proud parent. And I just want to say, that's my kid. I trained them how to do that.
You can really proud of them anyway. But we are talking about spacewalks. I think it's a really dangerous activity anyway.
Extremely dangerous.
And extremely dangerous, one of the most dangerous activity in the world. But how dangerous it is, and what are the biggest risks during space walks?
The biggest concern that we're always extremely mindful of with your spacesuit is, of course, cutting any kind of hole in the suit, most likely in the hands, because you're going to use your hands to move yourself where you need to go, and there's lots of sharp metal pieces that could use your hands to use tools, and you're going to use your body to lean into that tool and put a lot of weight and pressure on it. And so we're always watching the suit pressure. That's usually our biggest concern, because if you start getting a hole, things can go bad very bad. You've got strikes from micrometeoroids that could come, rip a hole in your suit. You've got to worry about how much oxygen are they using up? Are they building up too much carbon dioxide within the suit? Does their suit have enough power? Is there die in the middle of their spacewalk and now nothing's cycling and they've only got a short amount of time to get back inside? So we kind of have a negative view. We're going to go out there and see everything could possibly be, but then just look out for, watch out, be careful of this, watch out for that. Oh, okay, they're good, they're good.
So it's not like in movies when they just pull them back.
We do practice that. We'll practice like, okay, you're out, you're training, and you've cut a hole in your glove. You've got 15 minutes, but we train them that so they don't panic, and they just know, okay, I'm going to be very quick and efficient, and I'm going to go, and I'm not going to panic.
I see. But nowadays, when space tourism is getting even more popular, we have Blue Origin, Axiom Space, Virgin, and so on. And do you think that space tourists will be able to go on spacewalks in the near future?
Absolutely, and I think it's going to happen probably in the next couple of years, realistically. We've already had a space tourist with SpaceX and the private-founded mission, and so I think that technically counts as our first commercial private tour spacewalk, but I do see a day where space tourism becomes a much more regular thing, and for an extra price, an extra fee, you can go out on a spacewalk for an extra, I don't know, $500,000. We'll take you outside on a spacewalk, and definitely.
And how do you think, how many hours of trainings they would need to be a space tourist walk outside of a space
We've
shuttle?
had those conversations when we've had space tourists come to the ISS and they beg, please, 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 could we do it? And we've had, well, you know,
2 weeks, whatever.
Yeah, like what could we do? Could we let them get in the spacesuit and just stick their head out the door? I mean, they're not going to take any tools. They're not going to really do anything. Just to go outside, float, and then come back in. It wouldn't take that long, actually. On the ground, yeah, maybe a couple of weeks just to show you how to move and be in the suit. And then depending on how more complicated you want to do outside would take more training. But yeah, just as a space tourist, we'll go outside and for 1 hour you get to float and look at Earth. We'll take a picture of you with Earth in the background. It wouldn't take that long.
Wow, that's really impressive. Anyway, so thank you very much for these very personal and very detailed information, because I think lots of us haven't heard about these things in such a detailed way. And I just would like to ask some questions from Jim. So what strategies can teachers use to spark their students' interest in career related to space?
Okay. Like I said, I spent a career on this. And recently, well, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 14 years, somewhere in there, I was tasked with leading the development of an education center at Kennedy Space Center. And I had some rules for myself, and these were my strategies. Everything we taught had to be authentic. It's really easy in space to start making stuff up or confusing things between Star Wars, Star Trek, who knows what, and what's real. So it had to be authentic. The second thing was I thought everything needed to be fun. Now, you might say, fun? Engaging. It needed to be engaging. It needed to be of high interest. And next, I thought everything we did needed to involve communication and collaboration skills. And the reason for that is, in space, space is such a complicated mission that it takes many, many people to be able to do it. And the single biggest thing you need to be able to do is work with somebody. And so I wanted to build that in. So in terms of strategies, another thing is I wanted to make it so things were understandable. And that's why this is laying here. If this is the size of the Earth, would you kick that thing to me? This is the size of the moon. And I'll tell you how I know it. Because it's the size of Australia, about. And if this is the size of the Earth, go back to the back door, Laszlo. The approximate distance between the Earth and the moon is from here to there. Now, he's actually a little bit too close. He'd have to go outside, but you can stay. But about there. Now, how long does it take if you step on the moon and say, that's one small step for man? How long does it take for that signal to get to here? It's 1.25 seconds. Okay, how do we illustrate that? We take a tennis ball. Somebody stands there next to the moon and says, that's one small step, and throws the ball. It takes about 1 second to get here. We have just illustrated the speed of light. Can you imagine the speed of light? It's instantaneous. No, it's 1.25 seconds. Thank you. Thank you, Laszlo. We also like to build models using ratios of the size of the solar system. If my thumb is the size of the sun, the Earth is about to this gentleman right there, right toward the end of his camera. And we can work that out using ratios. How big is the sun? What's the diameter? What's the circumference? What's the circumference? What we know the distance, we can divide that out, and you wrap the string around your thumb, and that's the distance. And kids can understand that and look at it and say, it doesn't have to be hard. You can picture it. We have a saying. Eryn knows the saying. It is. It's not.
It's not rocket science.
It's not rocket science. And that's what we do. That's what I try to do in terms of strategies. It's not rocket science. You can understand this. You can picture it. In fact, I love to get it so that kids get so good at it they can teach somebody else. Then I know they know it.
Wow, that was a great explanation. Thank you very much. My next question would be, how can you integrate space technology into a multidisciplinary education system? Like universities, how can you integrate? What would be your suggestion how to integrate space industry and the questions related to space industry into university education, for example, in Hungary?
That's a tough question. And it's tough.
That's why I'm asking.
Yes, it's been very tough in the United States. And I can't speak well to Hungary because I don't know your educational standards. But in the United States, we have a set of what's called educational standards. And I think they were written by well, I shouldn't say this. It was passed down, written on a stone tablet. Anyway, everybody has to use these things, and different states, different ones, and nobody has anything about space in them. So what I have to do is figure out what standards are there that speak to space. So I fall back on an idea, and that idea is Andy Aldrin, my boss, my former boss, would say, everything we do on Earth will someday be on the moon. That inspired me to think about it as saying, if there's a process on Earth, that process will eventually be on the moon. Say, oxygen carbon dioxide cycle. Every fifth grader in America learns about this. That will be important if we have a moon base. I try to find those things that we do on Earth that we learn about that connect to space and try to teach it from that angle. And then if I can inspire a teacher, maybe they'll start teaching it as, here's how it work on the moon, because here's how it works on Earth, and make the connection the other direction.
Yes. Wow, that was a good connection. Thank you very much. And I have another series of questions, I think, for both of you. So for my next question is going to be, what are the latest trends in space technology which excite you the most nowadays?
For me, I'd say the latest trends are the...
Don't say space tourism.
That one's a given. But this push to find the life support technology, so the greenhouses being able to grow and produce our own food in space so that we don't have to ship it up from the ground. That's very expensive and time-consuming and not efficient. So I love watching sci-fi movies where they've got their space gardens, and that speaks to me on such a human level. And I am seeing more and more research to enable that, because when we go back to the moon, when we go to Mars, you have to be self-sustainable. You cannot rely on just shipments from Earth. And so I'm excited to see a lot of these things that were previously only ever seen in science movies to come true now.
And how about you?
Wow. The other day, I missed this. I had got on the plane and was in Hungary when this happened, but Jeff Bezos, the Amazon guy, the guy that owns Blue Origin, launched a rocket that's 98 meters tall and 7 meters across. Wow, what a huge rocket. And that took off from about 12 miles from my house. And when that happened, the house shook. I know that. It had to have shaken. It's a huge rocket. And after it launched, there were people talking about his goal of someday taking all polluting manufacturing and manufacturing off of Earth and doing it in Earth orbit and saving Earth for us to live on and space where we do our manufacturing. Now that's a little ways out there. I probably won't be around for it. I'm 67, but that's exciting to me.
Wow, that would be really exciting anyway. My next question would be, how do you think international collaborations in space technology can be improved?
Can be improved. Oh, you're going to get me on my political side here. I think
Open discussion.
It benefits, for example, the US and Russia. We've had a very interesting, colorful history, but it was amazing to see us work together in space to build this international space station. We went from two countries this close to starting nuclear war with each other to within just a few years, we're working together to survive and build in space. And I thought that was amazing. And I love seeing all these other countries that say, I want to come too, I want to be part of this too. And it's beautiful because you're going to have such great diversity, such wonderful ideas from all these different countries that have different perspectives. And I'm really hoping everyone will be able to see the benefit of actually working together and look what we can do as a species, not as a country or individual nations, but as a race, when we all came together and all of our different ideas worked to create this beautiful thing out into the solar system.
That's a really positive message. Yeah. Thank you very much. And what's your opinion about that?
When I taught, one of the things that I looked at was I looked at my students and realized I was in a very rural place and my students only interacted with that same small group of kids. So I started working towards connecting them with other classes, and right at when video conferencing came along, and that led me into video conferencing. And my kids would do a project, another school would do it, and we'd compare and we'd work together. And then I found out we could do this across the ocean, and we started doing this with groups of students, in Wales through British Telecommunications. And my kids would come up with these incredible things, and these Welsh kids would come up with things that were incredible. And sometimes we'd look at something the Welsh would say, it would do or say, what in the world is that? And then we'd ask, and they'd explain. But as we built longer and longer, more distant partnerships, we got so much better ourselves. And I feel like that's what happens with international collaboration in space. We just get better ourselves by working with each other and knowing each other.
That's a really good word, really. Knowing each other better through space industry and space science, anyway. So I would like to ask, what advice would you give to young professionals aiming to enter the space industry? What would be your personal advice for them?
Personal advice based on my own experience
Of course.
is do exactly what you're doing right now. You're taking time out of your life. You could be doing anything else, but you chose to be here tonight and to listen to what we have to say. You're going to talk to us. We're going to talk to you. I want you to keep doing that. I want you to talk to other people and then tell people what you got to see and hear and bring them with you next time. Bring a friend and spread that around, and you'll be amazed at who you get to meet. I was just telling Jim before tonight, if you told me when I was 16 years old, someday you'll be invited to Hungary as likely the very first NASA engineer to come talk about your life, I would have said, pinch me, no way. And so the adventures and the amazing experiences that I've gotten to have just because I was curious and I wanted to talk, So I can say from my own experience, that's worked out really well. So you've already got that curious mind, otherwise you wouldn't be here tonight. So keep doing that. Network, get to know people, ask questions, and bring a friend with you next time.
Thank you. That's a really good...
Infect them with your curiosity and your passion. It'll spread to them too. We're going to have a good pandemic this time, a good virus of curiosity and knowledge.
Yeah, and actually, they have to study a little bit and pass their exams as well.
Well, that too, yes. Please don't forget your grades, but...
Don't forget to pass the exams anyway, and following classes sometimes, at least. Anyway, what's your opinion about that, Jim?
I often get asked this a lot of times. And my answer to people when they say that, I say, find that thing you really think is fun to learn about. It's just, you just want to know about it. You're just curious. And maybe it's more than one thing. Find those things that you're really interested in and follow them. And then be prepared that you may end up doing something entirely different, but just follow those interests. Have fun at it. And then you never know where it's going to take you. I won't go into long stories, but
wow,
it
I
certainly
could
worked
listen
for
to
me.
it anyway. I could listen to it for a long time. But I have another interesting question I wanted to ask. So do you think that nowadays everybody's talking about sustainability, ESG, environment-friendly things? Do you think that space industry could help to enhance the sustainability or provide some solution for climate change in the world?
Absolutely, and it already is, and it already has, and will continue to do so. Everything we learn about how to be a human being in space, we've turned right back around and used and implemented to better our lives, our environment right here on Earth, and then that turns right back around and makes it better in space, and then it comes back to, and it's this beautiful cycle of more knowledge, more awareness, more improvement, more innovation and creativity, and it just keeps going, and it's fantastic.
We have a project called Home on the Moon where we ask students, we put kids in teams, or we have families do this. We even had a group of university students from Krakow, Poland do this. They sent me a 110-page paper. Wow. But what it amounted to is we say, how do systems work on Earth that sustain life? And I've got a pyramid. How do these systems on Earth work? How would they have to be modified and improved to work on the moon? What can we learn from those improvements to improve things on Earth? We draw an arrow back. And it's air, water, food, shelter, energy, transportation. Oh, I'm supposed to talk slow. But it's air, it's water, it's shelter, it's energy, our systems. But it's that pyramid. I hope that answers the question. I forget
Yes,
the question.
yes, of course. I have so many questions, but time's flying very fast. Anyway, so what do you see as the most exciting development in the next decade of space exploration?
We're going back to the moon.
Yes.
And we're not going just to say we did there, put a footprint. We're going to survive, we're going to thrive and live, and we're going to become a race that has presence, permanent presence on the moon, Mars, no longer just isolated to Earth. And I truly believe that's going to happen very soon, definitely within our lifetimes, and it's going to be so awesome. Our children are going to grow up just accepting there's always been people on the moon. When has there ever not been people and society on the moon? And I'm excited to see them take that for granted.
Yes.
The next person, if the next person to walk on the moon is an American, that person will be a girl. I'm pretty excited about that. I've got 4 granddaughters, pretty soon a 5th one in another 2 weeks, and going to be a girl. And what I do, one of the things I do when I talk to groups is I say, if you are the next person to step on the moon, what will you say? And a very insightful young woman the other day said, the first, but not the last. And it brought tears to my eyes thinking that. And she did that in just a heartbeat. So.
And how do you see the role between the private industry and between NASA or any other state? So how do you see the relationship between private space industry and the original national space industry?
I think it's going to be a beautiful relationship of innovation and kind of like a young person working with an old person. The young person's gonna have a lot of great, crazy ideas, and you're gonna have the old person who says, we've done that, it didn't work, or I don't know, that seems risky. And they're gonna find a balance, and it's going to enable such beautiful creations that neither one of them by themselves would have been able to achieve. And so yes, it's going to be scary, and it's gonna be frustrating and stressful because we've done this for so long. Why don't you just listen to what we have to say? And then private space is going to be, why don't you ever want to try what I want to do? And classic parent-child relationship. But when it works, it's going to be beautiful harmony of, you know what? That was a really good idea, and we had enough experience to make it safe enough to work.
And my additional question would be, with the private space industry, who we can call astronauts?
That is a tricky question.
I know.
We've had that conversation. I don't know. Well, the nearest thing that immediately comes to my head is I see it happening much like the airline industry, where yes, you've all flown maybe on a plane. Does that make you a pilot? So I could see something like that translating into space, that maybe it's the actual commanders of the ship that get the title of astronaut. I don't know. That is definitely a great question, and that's just my guess. I'm not speaking on behalf of NASA when I say that, but that's my guess.
And what's your opinion about that, Jim?
If you fly in an airplane, you are an air traveler. So you're a space traveler. There's
Space
another
traveler.
term out there someplace.
Yeah. We'll have a new term.
But I don't want to get in trouble and say I don't think it should be astronaut. But I just said it.
But if you do some research or any type of activity, even though that you're a private astronaut, I would say, are they astronauts?
Well, yeah, I think they are. They're trained. And I wanted to answer that previous question, though, about private,
yes, definitely.
Private and commercial, government and commercial. In the United States, there's Project Artemis. The last goal of Artemis is to create a presence on the moon. And it seems like there's a space there where it should say permanent presence. But it can't say that, and the reason it can't is that depends on federal funding. And no one can promise that the government will fund anything for more than 2 years, because our government goes in 2- and 4-year cycles. Whereas, if a company comes along and finds a way to profit from the moon, you can count on, if there's money to be made, we'll be up there. Now, somebody's got to figure out who owns it. And you're sitting over there knowing about this. But when we find ways to profit from being on the moon, that's going to make us be there. And that's not going to be government doing that. If you look at the history of the United States, our very short history, it didn't start in 896, 1776. Here we're sending people across the United States. Lewis and Clark went across just to see what was there. But what really settled the United States was when we found gold in California. Oh boy, that's what's going to happen on the moon too, I believe.
That's going to be a very challenging time for the whole world, I think, because I believe that nations are going to fight for valuable materials and so on. So it's going to be a different era.
We need to get this law settled.
Yeah, we have to, that's why we need lawyers some days, space lawyers who can regulate all these issues, hopefully. My last question, my last question, do you think that lawyers have some room in space industry?
Absolutely, and will be required. A definite necessity.
Okay. And what's your opinion about that?
My son, for a time, was a space lawyer. Yes.
Oh, good for us. Anyway, because we are closing to the end, and I really would like to save some space for the audience to ask some questions. What would be the one takeaway message from you for my dear audience?
Don't limit yourself based on where you are now in your life, in your geography. Don't tell yourself, I can't do this because I'm not good enough because. Just tell yourself, when I get there, I'm going to do this. When I get there, I want to do that. Keep that mindset, and that's going to pull you through your darkest times.
Thank you very much.
There are lots of roles in space.
if there's one person that flies, okay, 2 people walked on the moon in Apollo 11. 400,000 people worked on that mission. And a couple hundred million paid for it. But there are lots of roles besides just going to space.
That's a really good message. And that's why there's a huge room for space industry. I think that's a really good message now. And thank you very much for replying my questions, my preset questions. But now I would like to give the floor for the audience to ask some questions, because I think it's a very rare opportunity for all of us to meet these very special experts live in Hungary. And that's why I would like to give the floor to you to ask some questions right now. The microphone is coming.
While the mic's coming up, know that my wife is probably watching this from Ames, Iowa, 7 time zones away.
Hello to your wife. So I have a technical question. As far as the spacesuit is concerned, are we ready to perform long-living missions on the moon, doing moonwalk on the Mars? So are we ready? Do we have spacesuits ready for that?
So the spacesuits that we use right now on the International Space Station are not the spacesuits that will be used on the moon and Mars. There is a new spacesuit. If you're familiar, it's called the XEMU, and that suit is finishing up its development and going through testing right now, and that is the suit that will be walking on the moon, and it's my understanding that it's being designed in such a way that you can change out different parts on it to go to Mars, to go to moon, and enable different types of activities. So it's going to be an extremely versatile, multifunctional spacesuit.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Paula, I am economist, so tell me some information on the profitability of the space industry, income, cost, and profit. Because I think that 2 wings. One is the private space industry, and the other, as I think, the state one. What is the background of the profitability? Thank you.
Can I jump this one? Okay. Okay. You have to find some way to get money back. Our government, the government does it because we feel it's worthwhile to do. But Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos Elon Musk has already developed a system to place a network, a constellation of satellites, 4,000 satellites in orbit, and sell and make it so that you can get your internet off of that. Now, if I charge people, well, let's just keep it light, 1 billion people, $125 a month for internet access is yes. Because it costs him a lot to launch them, but he's figured out how to cut his launch costs by reusing his rockets. But he's come up with a product on Earth supported by space. So the economics is, can you figure out a way to make money? And if you can, and he has, and apparently it's good enough that Jeff Bezos is doing exactly the same thing. He has a different system that's just going to be starting. And he's coming to the party late, so they must think there's enough money for 2 big players to be in this game. So I hope that answers your question. But our government does not care if it makes money. When we spend money, we spend it on Americans for the most part. Everybody's happy, well, except those of us that pay taxes. But is that an answer? Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I have 2 very small questions. What about your opinion about the space rush? This is the first one. And the second one, what about that human goes to the Mars?
Explain. Okay, I couldn't
the
hear
question
very
was
well.
about space crash.
Space rush.
Crash. It means. Do you think you would like to ask some questions about the space dust when it means when there's a collision between
Space debris.
As
space
someone
debris.
who is always worried about things hitting a spacesuit, yes, we're always worried about space trash, and every day more and more space trash is being created, and it is certainly a problem that needs to get tackled soon, especially as we're growing at a pretty quick rate out there. And I've already seen some really cool design ideas that they hand to students and say, design me something that will collect space trash. Some wild and crazy ideas, but that's where these best ideas come from. So it is something that is being worked on, and it is definitely a concern.
Another question was about Mars. So
Human goes to Mars.
yes, and human. So when we can get back to Mars, well, not back, but when we can get to Mars or land on Mars with a human mission. That was the question.
Oh, when are we going to land
Yes.
back on Mars? Oh, okay, gotcha. That remains to be seen. I hope, fingers crossed, within my generation. We have a lot of questions we need to answer first. I know on the surface it seems should be easy. We can go to the moon. Why can't we go to Mars? But the more we've learned even about just orbiting around Earth, for every one question we've answered, we've uncovered 100 more. And then we say, okay, how's that going to work on the moon? And then same thing. Well, that's going to spawn a bunch more questions that we never thought about. Good thing we stopped to ask these questions on the moon before we went to Mars. That would have been a big problem. And so we're going to have to do this process many, many times over until we all feel we think we've got enough answered or can figure it out that now we feel safe enough to go to Mars. So yeah, I wish I could give you a more certain answer of X many years, we're going to have it. But just when we get confident to say, we know all the answers, we discover a new question of, oh, we didn't think about that. Ooh, okay, back to the drawing board. We got to figure this all over again and question everything we thought we knew. So, but I'm hoping, because the way the technology progresses is faster and faster and faster, I'm really hoping that within my lifetime I can see humankind set foot on the moon, or Mars.
So you would
I
say,
really want to jump.
yes, just okay.
With the moon, when we went to the moon, it was 1.25 seconds back with a radio signal. With Mars, Mars is going around the sun, Earth is going around the sun. Sometimes they're both over here. At that point, they are 4 minutes apart by radio. 1.25 seconds, 4 minutes. 6 months later, Earth is here, Mars is about here, 14 minutes. 6 months later, Earth's back here, Mars is over here, 22 minutes. We often say we're going to go to the moon and on to Mars. And we say, and on to Mars really quickly. It's a mega jump from moon to Mars. And one of the biggest issues in NASA, people often think about, most of the people working there think about the technology. Now, some people think about the people. Look around the room and pick out 5 people you wouldn't mind spending in a very close environment, spending the next 4 years with, that you could never escape. Can you imagine? That's what a Mars mission will be. 8 months out there, 2 years there, 8 months back. Wow.
That's a really long time. If you have bad company, I think. Now I see that's why we have a psychology department, and I think this is their task to explore, because I think it's not about technology, but about human behavior. How can you support to live in the same very small space during such a long time? My question would be, there are some questions related to one-way ticket to Mars. There are lots of ethical questions related to that, because according to certain scholars, they said that, okay, we don't have to bring back people from Mars, so we just have to give a one-way drive to there and be there and colonize it and stay there, not thinking about how to get those people back to Earth. What do you think about that idea?
Eryn, I want you to answer this, but I want to say something first.
Go ahead.
The first baby born on Mars will not be able to return to Earth.
Do you think so?
Think about that, what that means. Okay.
And what's your opinion
Yes,
about
that's
that?
an incredibly complex, complicated question. I'm reminded of history in the past when you would board a ship knowing you're never going to come back to this country again, very likely. And that was okay. And so that's going to be an extremely personal question of, I know that's not for me. I definitely want to be able to come back.
Me neither.
But yeah, but I know there are people out there who said, sign me up. I want off this planet. And so again, in my opinion, I think if everybody in the room agrees, then okay. As long as nobody is being forced to go. Now, as a human, we want them to come back because we need to hear their story. We need to be able to talk and ask questions and not have to wait 20 minutes for a transmission to go and back. So there's definitely value in bringing the human back. But yes, it's going to be a very complicated question. And I remember years back when they posed this online, and immediately 1,000 people signed up and said, I volunteer to be the first human on Mars, and I accept I will never come back to Earth.
Oh,
so it's like, clearly there's people that are willing to do it.
As a lawyer, I hope that it's not gonna me who has to write that type of contract.
Right.
Because that would be a very
And I
good
sure
contract.
hope they don't get halfway there and then change their mind.
Because
like,
it's a question that,
too
oh,
late.
okay, I'm halfway there, but I changed my mind. Oh, let's find a space court who shall decide how can we turn them back, huge lawsuits and so on. That would be a very difficult time. And anyway, this is really beyond the scope of law, but there are lots of legal questions related to that as well. So I think that was a very interesting discussion about that. So we still have a few minutes for questions. Laszlo? Okay, you have the mic.
Hi, good evening. My name is András Edel. I'm a researcher. I mostly focus on space defense and security. First of all, thank you very much for taking the time to come and talk to us about and sharing your life experiences. And you mentioned how important it is to educate the young generation and to motivate them, to raise their interest. In 2019, Pew Research Center did a survey about kids. You know, they asked them the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? They did it in China, in Great Britain, and in the United States. And in the US and the UK, the number one answer was, blogger or YouTube person, influencer. In China, it was astronaut, clear lead. And my question would be that did you see a change in this in recent years? And if not, what would we need to achieve kind of a turnaround for Western society and education? Thank you.
I believe that those numbers would remain the same today. But people also love to say, they know I go and speak to thousands of kids in a year. And people will say, are kids going to hell in a handbasket? You know, what about this new generation? And they just want to just wring their hands. And there are a lot of great that don't want to be bloggers, but they're not out shouting it. Now, there's some that want to be bloggers and want to blog about what they know about space and share their excitement. But there are millions.
Maybe they want to be the first blogger from the moon. Coming at you
be.
live from the moon. Like and subscribe.
People ask me, well, do you have any faith in the next generation? And that's really the question. Do we have faith in the next generation? And I really do. I think there's some great kids out there going to do great things. And certainly my grandkids, I hope.
I'll jump in real quick. I'm not worried. Kids are amazing. Kids, their sense of imagination and adventure, I'd say poll those kids in a couple more years and see if they've changed their mind. Do they even know astronaut and space is a thing? Maybe they don't even know it's an option. Maybe they just don't see themselves there. But they're not mutually exclusive. As we said, they could want to be the first ones to blog from Mars. And, children are going to have many different interests over their lifetime. But also, most children are genuinely filled with curiosity, excitement, passion, and a sense of adventure. And I say, if anything, just get out of their way. Let them go for it, because these kids that are growing up are incredible. And if you just point them and say, hey, space is an option too, they're going to attack it with such a ferocity that good luck trying to control them at that point.
That was a really good explanation. And I believe that we have to show for our children what they can do and provide them options.
Yes,
that show them what they can do, and I hope that they can find their own space in space industry. One more question.
Hello, I would like to ask two questions. One is the fake moon landing and the flat earth problem. What is your opinion? What is?
Oh, such a question, Laszlo. Well, we have time. That's good night, folks.
Honestly, I try to avoid unprofessional questions, so I can rephrase this question. So what was the most unprofessional question which has been ever asked from you as an expert? And then you can answer for these questions.
I have had people come up to me and say, is it true? Did we really land on the moon? And I can tell them, absolutely we did. Without a shadow of a doubt, we definitely did. And there are some people that I can reach, and I can help erase that little bit of doubt. And I accept that there are some people I'm never going to be able to reach. They've already decided, and no amount of fact, proof is going to change their mind. And I want to say that's just human nature. I'm hoping that that is a very, very small percentage of society, but who knows?
Unfortunately, I think it's a big percentage of the society. So where do you store the aliens?
I can neither confirm nor deny, but meet me afterward. I'll show you later.
Okay, afterwards we can discuss about it.
Okay, so some years ago, I was in India, in Delhi, at a place called the International School. And what I didn't notice was that we came in the back door, so I didn't see there was a MiG mounted in front of the school. It wasn't an F-86, it was a Russian MiG. You know, I was in a Russian school. And after we gave our presentation, there was about 1,200 students in this gymnasium, and one of a teacher got up and said, when your cosmonauts allegedly landed on the moon, I think it was faked. And I said, we brought back rocks. We brought back rocks. We brought something back that no one has ever disputed. And my colleague, a NASA engineer, Jack Bacon, says, Jim, quick, pulls me away from the microphone and says, when we went to the moon, it was a competition with Russia to get there first. The day after we landed, they congratulated us. Do you think that if they would have had a doubt in the world, they would have done that? And it just shut this guy up.
And how can you explain the flat Earth problem? How would you reply for that?
It's an interesting and very difficult time because you've got the rise of incredible computer graphics. You've got AI that's coming on board. It's going to be harder and harder to trust anything that you see with your own eyes. So I'd say the only solution is we need to build up space tourism quick so I can just take you up there and show you myself.
Wow.
I want to show you what I think is the problem. Can anybody explain to me how this works? Really in detail how this works. You know, how does the internet work? We have such complexity in our lives. I think there are many people that just look at the complexity and say, I don't understand. The Earth's flat. You know, they don't really think the Earth's flat. What they're really saying is, I don't understand. I choose not to feel stupid, so I choose to not think about it. So it must be flat. We must not have gone to the moon. As they pick up their phone and call their friends.
Well, that's a good finish, and I believe that's why we reached the most important point, that education and talking about space and talking about space industry, even though that this is a university of human science, not purely related to technology, but I think every day we have to talk about space, we have to talk about space industry, we have to talk about law related to space. We have lots of experts here, even here in the room, who take lots of time on space education and space research and space law and so on. There are so many aspects, and I really believe that we have to encourage students and in very early age to be involved in this process, and that's why I hope this evening was also a good example how we can educate and how we can talk more about space industry and space explorations. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for accepting my invitation. I hope that your family managed to watch my poor English in the US as well. Say hi to them.
Hi, sweetie.
But actually, you'll be able to watch it back on YouTube sooner or later anyway. So thank you very much for coming, and I hope we will have the opportunity to meet again with some other interesting topics in Károli Open Talks, which is a new way of communication, and I truly believe that we will have very intimate discussions related to certain very interesting topics. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me, and thank you very much for spending your night with us tonight and letting us tell you our stories and hopefully answer some of your questions.
Yes, thank you very much. What a wonderful place to come and visit.
Thank you very much. Good night. Good night.